All right, good evening, everybody. Today is Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. This is the Board of Directors meeting for the Math and Science Academy. I call this meeting to order at 6:01. Do we have a volunteer to read the mission, vision, and land acknowledgement?
I'll read mission vision.
Go ahead.
Okay, I wasn't sure if somebody wanted me to do land acknowledgement or not.
We'll let them build the courage.
Okay. Our vision is to be an innovative, sustainable model of academic excellence for all students that creates well-rounded, lifelong learners and global citizens. Our mission is that we provide accelerated and inclusive curricula and instruction in all subjects with an emphasis on math and science.
We have a volunteer for the land acknowledgement. And then Brian.
We would like to acknowledge the land that we gather on is the Ochite Sha Kowi, the land or the people of the Seven Council Fires, and the BD Katun, the existence of the Dakota Owa T, have lived in this area since the immemorial and before the U.S. war was created, and the state of Minnesota was created. They lived in the Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Michigan. They were the caretakers of the land and lived in harmony. They belonged to the land and the land did not belong to them. It is within MSA's responsibility as an academic institution to disseminate knowledge about the indigenous people and their history and their relationship with this land. MSA works hard to build the relationship with indigenous students and their family through academic pursuits and historical recognition.
Thank you. Roll call of members: Wendell Sutton here, Isaac Leonardi
Here.
Sarah Harms
Here.
Tamara Brooks
Here.
Jules Kinkle
Here.
Brian Linsmeyer
Here.
Kari Kerner.
Here.
Dan Ellingson is absent tonight. Mary Yap.
Yeah.
I did not receive open forum, so we will move on. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second.
Discussion? Second call? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Are there any conflicts of interest? Hearing none, we'll move on. Approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I will move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I will second.
That was Kari. Seth Kingle. Discussion?
The special meeting minutes were, I had ... in there because I think I missed something. So if you go down to the special meeting draft, on discussion of the decision and budget.
Second page.
Yeah,
That's special meeting, okay.
yeah. So it says for next year, the extracurricular budget shifts to blank or ... We could just probably take out extra, I don't know, do we need the number in there? Is that gonna help or?
No, it's just that it's a split between extracurricular and stipends. So the sum is consistent.
Okay. So change to like extracurricular and stipend budget.
And it's not the whole budget, it's just parts of it, so it's split.
That's the only change I had for that one.
Make sure you copy that sentence into the
Okay.
discussion. further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Jules?
Sorry, like, reapproving both sets of minutes? Or are we doing this individually?
I believe the motion is for both.
Okay, okay.
I move to approve the minutes, so plural.
So it would be both, okay, I just, before I did anything, I wanted to make
Okay.
sure I did hear that correctly, sorry, I apologize to everybody else.
All in favor? Abstain? Opposed, sorry.
Oops.
Well, we'll count it, we'll count it.
I was abstaining,
Abstain, abstain.
Abstain, I wasn't here
Yep.
for special.
I wasn't here for the 520.
Yep. And then opposed. Sorry for the confusion. Motion passes. Moving on to board recognition. As you're aware, three members will be leaving the board this term. And we will be onboarding 3 new ones, myself included, Jules Tinkle and Dan Ellingson. I'll hand
So I just, as our tradition now is, we have little dragons, because once you're a dragon, you are always a dragon. So I just wanted to individually thank each of our exiting board members. So I'll start with Wendell. Thank you so much. You have done so much for this board and helping us get on track with excellence in governance and setting us up for the future. Thank you. And Jules, I want to thank you for coming on the board. This was kind of an unknown. You took a risk with us, and you have been with us along a lot of difficult journey, and you've seen us turn into a much more successful board. So I just want to thank you for being part of that. And then I just want to, I will give Dan his dragon. He he comes to our expansion meetings on site, but I want to just publicly thank Dan for his 6 years on the board. It has been a long road. He has seen a lot, all starting from the pandemic all the way through to where we are now. He's taken leadership in several roles, and so I expect he will still continue to be a dragon, as you always are once you become a dragon. So thank you. Can I take your pictures?
Yes.
You've got the unicorn.
I know, right? Documenting how this works.
Maybe if you two come around on the front,
Oh, boy.
maybe if everybody else kind of scooches around this way so it's not backlit.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone will be in the picture. Here, have a friends.
Oh. I'm just gonna say. Oh, I'm really good at that, that's true.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Put it out there. I just want to say thank you. It's been a tremendous experience being on this board and seeing its growth. I'm hopeful for the future. I think that it's going to go very smoothly. I'd like to especially thank Dan for his 6 years. It's a long term to sit on a board with dedication and through everything that he's been through. So to Dan, thank you. And to Jules, thank you for stepping up as a community member.
So Ben, and how you comment, and it's nice to be able to be a part of something where there was a lot of uncertainty, and then to watch how things have grown and developed over the past, 2 years is a relatively short time for the amount of growth and change that we have seen here. And you all should really be quite proud of yourselves for that, because that's not an easy feat. Coming from some of our larger districts, I can tell you that usually doesn't happen. Things tend to become entrenched and it's hard to change. There might have been entrenched things here, but people were able to take that step back and go, what is in the best interest of our school and our students? That's a really brave and hard thing to do, to put aside your other interests. So I want to say thank you. It's been a real pleasure to be a part of a community that allows that to happen. So thank you.
I would say, I would like to clap for you, but I think it'll break people's ears.
It's a little echoey in here, yes.
Yeah, so,
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
yeah, we do the,
All right, moving on. The consent agenda is our motion to pass the consent agenda. Approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I will second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Board and administrative reports from the board. In our last regular meeting, we held a closed meeting to review an employee under the board's direction. The statement issued is the board is highly appreciative of Dr. Hinton's diligent and successful efforts, particularly in exceptional work on the expansion project. Dr. Hinton has met or meets all of the expectations of the board of directors and exceeds expectations in her contributions to the expansion and engagement with the board community or the broader community. The board looks forward to Dr. Hinton's continued success in fostering student achievement, overseeing MSA's operation, and contributing to the school's growth in the coming years. At our last work session, we discussed the review, but then we also talked about moving forward, setting up the meeting for July, the organizational meeting for July, which some of that will be reflected later in the action items. And then from Representative Yap, who attended the VOA.
Okay, so here goes 15 hours of insight and education in 5 minutes. So buckle up and hold on. It was a really great conference. There was a lot of networking. Ask me about my 36-year-old reconnection I made at the conference. It was quite cool. The sessions I attended included governance and leadership, which was very, very good. And I have her card that I left on the table. But she was excellent in charter school governance. Background and evolution of charter school and facility financing. And then I attended Becoming a Trusted Leader with Dr. Bruce Locklear, who stated we're in a trusted epidemic, and a trust epidemic, and one of the best ways to restore trust is through clarity and reasons that people work for or belong to an organization is trusted leadership. Then the lunch, that was just through lunch. 1 day through lunch. Then until lunch. Then I had the wonderful pleasure of being introduced to Dr. Tom Miller, who I'd heard of before in some of my leadership studies. And he presented Leadership Begins and Ends with You, or building relationships. And key points there were leadership begins and ends with you, but you can't grow unless you develop others on your path. If you want to go fast, go it alone. If you want to go far, bring others along with you. Then we had capturing kids' hearts, and the thing that stuck out to me there was that the lowest acceptable form of behavior over time will become your culture. So always seek to raise people up and set the standards high. Like I said, lunch started my sessions with Dr. Miller. I think I ended up with 4 of them with him, and this is a book that he wrote that I am looking forward to vacation next week to digging into. I cannot wait. It's 10 indicators of high-performing charter schools, but the little bit that I have been able to glean from this in what I've read so far is that this is something that's transferable, not just to this, but to organizations as well that I serve in. So, Making the shift from manager to coach. Coaching is the only intervention that includes both the conscious and the subconscious. Session 2, or actually 3, was on board development. And he had some really good insight into that, and the longer a school has been in existence, the larger portion of the agenda needs to be focused on the future, which I thought was really interesting. And board positions should have a focus. For example, are we looking for different professional backgrounds in the people that we approach to serve on the board? And you need to be intentional in reaching out to people to consider serving on the board. And really stress the importance of all members being involved in committees and all documents saved and held in one place, both a physical copy and a digital copy. The next session with him was on succession planning, and we delved into succession planning for board of directors, as well as administrators, as well as for teachers and in the school, teacher leadership and student leadership. And I thought that was really interesting how he brought all 4 of those areas. Then we took a break from Dr. Tom and went to disciplining and special education behavior needs, and we really looked at a lot of legality and case study law, which led into the last topic for Tuesday, which was the 2025 case study takeaways. The biggest takeaway I had there was the court case of Minnesota Court of Appeals, file 24-043C, stating that if you have calendared digital learning days, IEPs need to address how those days look for students on an IEP and how those supports are available to them. Then it was safeguarding school emergency operations plan, and our emergency operations plan should be filed with the authorizer because frequently they're not on site as well. And that the communication process and clarity should be practiced even in drills so that when something happens, it's automatic. And I thought that was really, I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. And he had some really good points to communicate with parents, and Kate, I'll follow up with you with this stuff there too. Then we went to advocates and Leela Academy, which is an international languages academy up in Forest Lake, partners with local organizations such as Rotary, City Councils, Foundation, and alumni. And they have created a working or group committee to advocate both within their city and within the state. And they have been hugely successful, including in their fundraising. It's resulted in increases in their funding from these local organizations and from the state. Then we finished with, okay, I've got 30 seconds left, guys. Max did the 2025 session takeaways, and I had 4 things that really kind of stuck out to me there. The authorizer performance evaluation report needs to be on websites and should be sent out to families. They talked a lot about transparency and what is required on our website. They also talked about if your physical and or mailing, it doesn't have to be both, it could be one or the other, changes. You need to, you must apply to the authorizer for a change in your address, so physical address, and they must submit that to the state. Which I was like,
For
oh.
board members or for the school?
This is for the school.
Okay, yeah.
They also talked about the new sealed bid process for purchases of $25,000 or more. The key of that one is that if we are found in violation, the state can reclaim that money. Like, okay. And the fact that, and this was probably the one thing that I'm like, oh, make sure you remember this, is that all board members must have a signed oath of office on file with their authorizer. So not just the Schedule K, I think is what it was before, but actually the oath of office needs to be signed by all board members. when they come on. So I would think for our new people coming on, but
Is that law might go into effect August 1st, though?
Yeah, that's something we have to look into, is when do those go into effect?
Yeah, we'll check though.
Yeah.
I've got a whole bunch of
well,
updates.
because I had asked, I said, does that include people coming on in July? And he said, I was told yes, but he wasn't sure if it included those of us who had been on for 2 years. So just something,
Yeah, we'll get
It's
some
there.
more.
It'll probably be best practice for everyone to sign.
probably.
At the
And
organizational
then we
meeting
just
and
have
then-
it
Yep.
going forward. So that was it, 5 minutes. Did I do
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Didn't we already sign off of the office, though, right?
We do conflicts of interest.
Okay.
No, there's a sign of the office, there is. Yeah.
So we got it.
We'll double check it, but
Yeah.
thank you, Mary. The BOA conference is very
It's
insightful.
good, it's action-packed.
It is action-packed. Driving home was very tired and going to work Thursday, because I worked Monday until noon, and then worked a little bit when I got to Bemidji, and then worked Thursday morning right away. I'm like, okay, I'm tired.
Members should consider going next year. All right, Dr. Hinton, ED report.
Okay. So first I'm going to do an academic report, a wrap-up on last year. So we have a projected, the graduation rate won't come out for another year, but based on our numbers, we had 96.2% graduation rate in 2025, which is good. It's a little lower than last year. We have 3 students that did not graduate on time, and that was due to all 3 of them failed a graduation requirement in PSEO. And we did have 1 student last year not graduate for the same reason. Most students can walk. If you're more than 1 credit behind, you can't walk. So we did have 1 student unable to walk this year. It's a great graduation rate, but we still need to do more work on PSEO because I don't think parents understand fully the impact that PSEO can have not only on high school graduation, college admission, and we've got some students who, although they graduated, they're on academic probation now for university, and some of them will not be eligible for financial aid because they've failed too many classes. So all of those PSEO classes count, and I don't think that students always understand that, okay, so I failed classes at Century, but I'm going to the U. The U knows. There's a national clearinghouse, that stuff all goes everywhere. So we're working, I'm working with Emily on making sure that families understand. This little table here shows the number of courses that were failed in MSA over the year. So the highest number of failed classes was in the 11th grade, and there were 21 classes that were failed by 15 students. 8 of them were in PSEO. The next highest was 12th grade, and every single course that was failed in 12th grade, all 19 of them were PSEO courses. And then 6th graders, it's not surprising, they came in and failed 12 courses semester 1, and then interventions and whatnot helped sort that out. So at MSA, we went from 40 courses failed in the fall semester to 18 spring semester. So those interventions did work. What was surprising to me was the number of courses failed by 11th and 12th graders, because those are high-performing kids. The kids who did not graduate are high-performing kids. They just, all 3 of the parents were shocked. And like the first week of June, when we had to call and say they were not graduating, because the parents can't see the grades. And the kids didn't tell them. So, and we can't see them, we don't know. We only find out when we get the grades from college, after the semester is over. So those are things that I think we have to do a better job in making sure that families understand. I personally would not want, in your senior year, taking graduation requirements is probably a bad idea. Most of our kids have taken care of nearly everything but their English and their social studies. Nobody failed in 12th grade on campus. But a number of them failed graduation requirements in PSEO. So it's just a couple more graphs that kind of just show the breakdown. 31% of the courses that were failed in MSA, or almost 32%, were PSEO courses, which is a huge percentage given the percentage of our population. So that's an area for us to work on. It's also something that we just need to do a better job in making sure that our parents understand the perils. If a student wants to try PSEO, I would strongly suggest that they take their high school graduation requirements here, if they're gonna be part-time, and take courses that they're interested in, other courses in PSEO to try that out. Because the consequences are a lot. Yes.
I have two questions. The first is, do we know the type of class that is being built? Is it a in-class participation course, or is it asynchronous on your own? Do we know that knowledge? And I mean, that'd be something to look into further into that. But then also, of the 11th graders, how many of them are now behind in graduating?
So they'll all be able to catch up if they don't continue the trend, because we've seen students fail things in PSEO and then just take them again in PSEO and have the same outcome. So what we do is we get the course name and the grade. So a lot of courses are offered online and in person. And so we don't necessarily, unless the student reports, we don't know whether they're taking them online or in person. But PSEO is a great deal if it's a great deal for you. Like if you do the work and you pass, it's phenomenal. But if you fail more than 60-some% of the credits taken, you go on financial aid probation. So you have to go through a whole thing to be able to get aid. And then if that goes on for, it depends on the number of credits and whatnot, but you can end up starting college if they allow you to start on academic probation the first semester. So every kid that took PSEO was highly qualified to be in PSEO. It was not students that were not capable of it. They could all read, they could all do math at grade level or close to grade level. So,
something else at play that's keeping them from being successful in that
well,
format.
and parents don't know, so parents can't, unless your child gives you their login.
Right,
And the school won't tell parents, the college
No,
won't
they
tell parents,
won't.
and we don't have access.
right.
So it's really hard because parents often think, well, I haven't heard anything from the school, it must be going all right. But you won't hear anything from us until it's past the time, because we don't know. So we're gonna continue to try to work on making sure that parents fully understand because PSEO is great, but if you wanna try to take, a course that's not required, there's a lot of courses that we don't require for high school graduation that colleges require as part of their, I can't remember what it's called, but there's a,
Their core.
yeah, the core curriculum, that won't impact graduation. It's still not good to fail the classes, but it's helpful if they don't stop you from graduating from high school. So, yes,
Question for you. What was the total size of this year's senior class?
the graduating class,
What number?
I
Do you
think we
remember?
were 82.
Okay. I was just wondering on a percentage, because I know 15 looks like a lot, but we also have to remember that junior class has 120 students in it.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it's,
Then how many of them are the same person, maybe having two, maybe three
well,
classes?
Well, this is how many students failed.
Failed a course.
So 15 students. To me, at first I looked at it and went, ooh, and then I went, oh no, remember, they have
Yeah, it's
40
about
more
12%.
kids.
So, it's a little higher, but that's the first time they start taking PSEO. And,
Question, in the high school curriculum, is there any sort of like adulting class, those? Because I'm just thinking, these kids who fail, they could just live with that independence of, I'm on my own, I got, living life out there.
So there's a couple things that are coming into play. There's the financial literacy course that is not required yet, but students are already taking it for personal finance. We talked a lot about choice making and preparing, and then our freshman seminar is on high schooling.
Okay.
But a lot of the students, one thing that's difficult for them in entering PSEO is they're not going through the normal college freshman orientation,
Okay, sure.
boot campy type thing that students typically would go through as they're entering.
With college kids.
Right, and colleges are not informed who's PSEO and who's not. So
Okay.
they have no idea who comes into class,
Okay.
who's a high school student and who's a full-time college student.
So they wouldn't have the support of friends, like roommates, or knowing how to go to their professor or.
Right, so like typically in that week, welcome week
Right, yeah.
type stuff that most colleges do, they go through the whole, how do you go to the college help center, how do you go to the writing center, how do you get tutoring, how do you do all those things, PSEO students don't get that. So,
To Kari's point, is there something that could be done during advisory time?
well, perhaps, but the other thing one of the things that, it's always a dance, because if you need too much help filling out the paperwork to go to PSEO, maybe you shouldn't go. Because if you can't do it yourself, then you're gonna have a hard time. Because you're expected to operate like an adult in those college courses. And, I mean, we treat the students like high school students. So there's a gap, and I don't think that they, we chase them down if they're not doing their work. Like, we will hound them, where are you? We call your mom, we can do whatever, and that doesn't happen in college.
Right.
And so that's a real shift for people. And, it's upsetting to have those meetings with parents, and your child is not graduating.
How many kids in 12th or 11th grade did PSEO?
Most of them.
So really, the majority of them are successful.
The majority are successful.
Okay.
The majority are successful. And we can't stop them. Like, Ms. Gravine will tell students if they fail the first semester, like, come back to MSA and let's get you through those courses
Yeah.
so you can graduate. If the student says no and the parent allows it, we can't stop. We're not legally allowed to say you must return to the school so you will graduate. They just can continue with that. So, I think it's just important to really talk about this, because it's something that can really seriously impact a person's future. I mean, you don't wanna have, and I'm out in the community during the school day, and I've seen our kids, they're working down at the Chick-fil-A, and I'm like, what are you doing? Well, why are you passing out chicken sandwiches right now and not in class?
Right.
And, I don't know how they're doing
Right.
in PSEO. And many of the kids, their parents go to work, and they don't know what the kid did all day long. Nobody, their classes aren't starting at 7 in the morning, they're not out the door, so. It's just something that we're working on,
Yeah.
and we need to pay attention to. Now, on the upside, our overall school-wide GPA was 3.43. We had 78%, I think, when it came down to it, students on the honor roll, so that's 557. And then these GPAs are the average GPA of the students on the honor roll. So in 12th grade, the 67 students that were on the honor roll, Their average GPA is 3.66. And those do include a lot of college courses, so they are successful. It's just about being careful and cautious in terms of what you take.
Can I-
Yes.
I'd also like to offer that I feel that Ms. Gravine does a fair amount of counseling regarding PSEO. So to your point, Kari, I think that is where students are getting some preliminary information about what to expect. She does a fair amount
Yeah.
of counseling
Good.
and talking them through and asking them, you know, intention-wise, like, what are you trying to accomplish? Is it that you are, you know, taking a required versus just trying to get your feet wet, that kind of thing. So she does talk them through it a bit. I think that you make a good point that it would be helpful to have some structured time where it's a little more intensive. Because I think that the attitude amongst our upperclassmen here is like, yes, I get to get off campus. And it feels like adulting. So I think it's not just adulting, it is about independence and what it looks like to be an independent student. That is a different, it looks different. We, you know, we will chase you down.
And I think, and I appreciate you bringing up that point, because I didn't want to say that Ms. Gravine isn't doing a great job with that. I think that the missing component right now is making sure that parents fully understand.
I agree.
Because the parents, I don't think, fully understand what can happen.
They're probably
Yeah.
making an assumption that someone is talking to their child about this grade or this class.
Well, and it's exciting, it's free college and the kids usually done well. The difference is the maturity and the ability to have that high level of
Yes.
executive functioning of, these are the tasks and these are when they need to be completed. Sorry, Linda.
Yes.
It is, I'm getting a little too excited. These are when they need to be completed by. And high school teachers do a very good job of, hey, let's pull out the rough draft of your paper, how far are we getting in that, you know, let's take a look at it, and you don't necessarily get that in college. The expectation is the paper's due next Tuesday, and you are working on it, and if you're struggling, you're going to the writing center, or you're coming to the office hours of the professor.
Right.
And so just really making sure that that maturity piece and that executive functioning is in place, because nobody's gonna do that for you at the college.
I would absolutely agree, after listening to this and thinking about the number of kids who are successful. That is very much, it's a very small number.
Yeah.
So it is, it's a life skill,
It is
independence.
a life skill.
It could very well be family emergencies or you know, something else going on, you don't know. And they don't know how to get through that. What do I do to navigate the system? Yeah, there's something. I mean, who knows? Who knows?
And some of the students do, like the student last year who didn't graduate. You know, I met with them extensively to kind of go through what's the plan now. And they did learn a lot from that experience. The number one thing that they learned was having to try to tell their parents that all the relatives that have bought plane tickets to come to this graduation may or may not be seeing a graduation. So, you know, because it's a public thing if you don't get to
Yeah.
walk.
Yeah.
You know, we don't make a big deal about it, but your family who bought the plane tickets to come out here to watch it, they're well aware what happened, and it's difficult for families because it has to be public. You know, if your student failed their English class, you probably don't put it out on a family group chat. But
Moving forward, we can
yes.
see some more communication through what we're calling right now the Parent Academy, and how to better aid your students.
yeah, I think so, and I think that in terms of, we're already working on having a form that parents have to sign, an initial each line, because sometimes we send the form home and they just sign it, because that's, parent, kid hands it to me, I'm going to PSEO sign. We're working on a thing, we have to initial each line that says, you know, no one is checking these grades except for your child, you know, and that kind of thing, so that they fully understand, what services the school can provide and cannot. Yeah.
At that same time, is there something being done, you know, you had said that the students don't get the orientation that a college student does. Is there something that the school could potentially provide for the students to say, you know, hey, if you're struggling with this, seek out your TA hours, seek out the professor, find where the learning center is. I mean, I know for some students when they go to college, they don't even know that there's a learning center available on college campuses.
So some of the problem, and I agree they need to know more about it, but they're going to a variety of different colleges too. So it's different in each school in terms of what services are offered, where they need to go, what they need to do. The legislature tried to tighten up a little bit by like telling us when a student drops a course. Typically though, when they fail, they don't drop, they just don't pass. And so we don't have any way to know that, who's struggling. And the students who do struggle, there's not like a prototype, they are across the board. So it's, and sometimes it's the ones who you think are gonna be the most successful, because they're not used to having to work it that much, but they struggle, so. The last part of this is just the expansion. I have a picture, which is before they started putting up walls. The back portion of the 3-story part of the building was complete this morning, or at least installed when I was there on site at 11. So that would be, Caitlin, if you bring it back down, it's these walls that go right to the back over there. So those are going up. They're starting to work down this side. They're, provided the weather is decent, it should be 12 to 14 panels a day now. So within 5 weeks, the building should be fully enclosed. So, yeah, it's a little while, so we're still, working through that. The construction team's working on our list of alternates, because there's all kinds of stuff that costs more. So we're just still trying to work through all of that and see which things we can afford now and which things we have to hold off on. So that will probably take just a little bit longer before we've got a full list of what those are and can start to make some decisions on those. It is an exciting time, so if you haven't driven by, drive on by. It looks like a building now. When you drive by before, they were just digging around, and we started to see it, it's right there.
Even with Dan's pictures, you can actually see the layout.
Yeah.
You can see the track. really
Yeah,
well.
because he's been putting up his
Yeah.
own, he said he would do more, I think he's coming back on Thursday, so we should have some more. And he can actually load them, right onto the website now. So if you go to the expansion tab, there's a construction photos file, and if you click there, you can kind of work your way through them. So,
Exciting times.
yeah, so
Yay.
that concludes the report. Sorry, it's quite a long one.
Any questions for Dr. Hanson? Hearing none, we will go on to the Finance Committee report from Nardi.
All right, we have the finance reports for May. They look similar to what we had the month before, with one big exception, just kind of looking at the overall working budget surplus. There was $250,000 from the ERC money that got transferred over to next year's budget. So that's the reason that the school's working budget surplus is the $498,000. And in the previous month, it was about $250,000 above that. So it's been a lot more to think about since we got the ERC funding as we look through the reports. As far as the approval for tonight, we didn't have a meeting in June. Kind of the thought I had is just this one time we'd vote just to approve it because these are the reports we got, and there will be a different treasurer and finance committee meeting in August, and then they'd still have 2 months to do. If there are questions, we will write them down and reach out to Dustin Reeves or whoever would be the person to report to for that, so we could take an extra minute in case there are questions or other thoughts beyond that, but that's my quick report to start.
Do you want to make the motion?
Yeah, so unless anyone has thoughts right away, okay, so yes, I move to approve the May financials.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Discussion? Second call for discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Thank you, Isaac. Moving on to action items. Is there a motion to pass the 522 Title 9, the sex non-discrimination policy grievance procedure process?
Move to pass policy 522, Title 9, sexual non-discrimination policy agreement and grievance process.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Discussion?
So this is coming about because with the new, with the current administration, they set the Title IX, that they write a policy as to how we're going to enforce Title IX. They're rolling back the Biden administration changes back to what it was in the previous, under the previous administration, or the first Trump administration. This mirrors Title IX. The Minnesota Human Rights Act provides many more protections than Title IX does, and we are still governed by those. But because it says Title IX, it's been recommended that we make it match the current Title IX law. So this is turning back the clock to where it was, I think in 2020, I believe, is when this one came out. So
With that, just reiterating the point that you also said, because of the human rights law, Minnesota human rights law, we still have quite a number of protections in place for staff and students still. So this is legislatively necessary to adjust at this point, but that does not mean we still do not have students and staff's best interest in mind to make sure this is a welcoming, safe environment.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Up next is the math progression pilot. This was a pilot that was introduced by administration after being reflected through the math department. We have 2 math teachers on board, so why don't we go through the motion first, and then motion to pass the math progression pilot?
I can move to pass math progression pilot.
Is there a second? I will go ahead and do that myself. Discussion? Isaac, did you want to speak on this? We did talk about this during our work session, so Isaac can give us the overview.
Sure. So I think this is something maybe the math department's kind of thought for a while. Is it always the best option for all students to take calculus? We think that having another difficult but different math class such as statistics could be good. We've had the integrated 2/3 kind of combined classes to kind of get students to get caught up into passing calculus on time, no matter where they enter high school. We've kind of wondered in the expansion if that's sustainable. So kind of we've thought that this could be a good way to kind of deal with having more students who might not be on track to graduate, and just in general that statistics can be a good problem-solving, tough math class for students to take, and can be good for the students.
I know in our discussion at work session, it was the state requirement is Algebra 2. It is MSA's requirement for calculus. I think that in my opinion, having something comparable to accommodate different types of learners in our society is important, and so I feel in favor of this myself.
I was gonna say, I can say I am fully in support of this. I wasn't at the work session, but for our students who are contextual learners, they sometimes struggle with how does calculus apply to my daily life, whereas statistics is something that I think is more readily applicable, and they can see, oh, okay, I'm gonna use this here. This is how I can, detract or disseminate this, that, or the other thing through statistics. So, for the differentiated learners, I think this is a great option.
I think, building off of that, I think stats is a very good thing to teach in terms of also understanding information that is put out, because it's not given. This is great to be able to use to prove points of your own. This also allows you to better understand when people are using statistics. This argument actually makes sense and it tracks. Or I see you're trying to use percentages, but these don't actually line up, and your confidence interval is way off. So you're giving kids more opportunities, or students, more opportunities to not be hoodwinked by incorrect data in the long run. That's a life skill. That's one of the best life skills you can have. Is not to be an independent thinker and not fooled by people who are telling you what you should think. I think that's great. Stats helps with that.
I think it's important to bring up that we still are not eliminating the pre-calculus requirement. So you still need that pre-calculus as well as statistics or college level statistics or calculus.
So I'm just thinking this through. For our students who started in 6th grade with the math progression the whole way through, they then technically could have, or would have, the opportunity to take a regular stats class their junior year to get their feet wet in stats before they would take a CIS or AP, kind of like some of them do with chemistry.
So we currently do not have a regular stats class. That doesn't mean that we won't at some point, but we currently, our 2 statistics classes that we'll be offering next year are college and the school statistics and AP stats. That doesn't mean that we won't potentially add more, but we currently don't have that.
I guess would do the integrated classes feed into statistics in any sense? To kind of give them in that direction? I'm asking the math department.
Yeah, and that's
I
a
think
great
that's 2
question
points.
because
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
there's small units built in. If people are short on time or something, that might be something that's kind of like the last thing included for sure. The nice thing with statistics is it requires a lot less on good algebra background than calculus does. So I've had some students who maybe kind of struggle with some algebra things. As long as they can kind of read and write well and are willing to learn, they can do a really good job in statistics starting at fresh.
Any further discussions? All right. Henry?
I just saw, I mean, again, Isaac, nothing against Sarah, you're more with the middle school, correct? And then Isaac, you're the one seeing that the kids, if they have the skills, it sounds like it gives them skills and options. We don't go to a restaurant and just order one meal. They need to have things that fit our taste buds, and anything we can do to help our students be successful or have that taste. And then I hate like my daughter's struggling with calculus because in high school they never had it. So that abstract thinking, that if we can give it a safe risk here, I'd rather have that for our students so that when they get out there, they're better prepared. So whether it be either or, I like having that option.
I think it's important to remember, this is a 2-year pilot, so we'll be tracking the data and seeing how this works in implementation before it becomes a permanent change, if it bears out to be something that's useful. Now, if it's not working, we don't have to continue for 2 years. We could abandon the pilot as well.
One other question. Because this is a pilot, I don't know if we have to or not, so I'm asking Jules, while I still have you here, and Wendell, while we still have you here. Currently, our policy says they have to have calculus. This is a 2-year pilot.
Calculus or college level math.
Or a board-approved equivalent.
Okay,
So the
That
pilot
was
right
a
now
question.
is up to be board approved. And technically, there are other courses they could be using instead of calculus, but this is a pilot to change that policy.
okay. I was just checking to see if we had to change the wording of that policy before in order to put this in place.
No, I think
We
we're
don't have
okay
that.
that way. We will, work with the math department, the high school leadership, and the counselor to figure out how to actually implement this in a way that's fair and doesn't create chaos for next year. So we still have to work through the procedures.
And could a student, I'm not advocating for this, I want to go on the record and say that because we just talked about PSEO classes and high school graduation requirements. But could a student then also take a statistics class on PSEO and have it count? Okay. I wasn't sure if we currently accepted that or not, or if that would have to be changed.
And I think we legally have to if we accept a statistics class as a college, as a high school graduation. If they took it in college and it met the criteria, we have to give them
Okay.
credit for that.
Just thinking about all of them.
Right, no,
The
it's good to
dominoes
think
here.
about. Good to think that through.
The other thing I want to double check is what graduating class does this apply to right away?
So I think we have to sit down and figure out what makes sense, because
Okay.
if we all of a sudden say it's for the class of 26, we have to make sure that we have enough spaces. Because I think currently there's maybe 10 more spots in your stats class, and CIS stats is full. So we're gonna have to think about what does that look like, and so that's the implementation piece
Okay.
that we're gonna have to sit
So
down and work through.
we can
if
still,
this passes.
yeah, pass this today, and then it could still be for the class of 27, who this first
For
applies to.
sure it would be for 27,
Right.
we'll have to see what we're gonna allow
If
for
it works for 26 or not, okay, yes.
Question.
Mhm.
So the kids who are taking it right now, these who are already in the class, coming from, Are they already through calculus, so this is like their, just in front of you?
And most of them are either currently taking, or would be concurrently taking calculus,
Okay,
or have already completed it
okay.
currently.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. The last item for the action items is the Teamworks contract. We did review this a little bit during our work session. So is there a motion to pass the Teamworks contract?
I will move to pass the team's contract.
Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Discussion? I know in our discussion at the work session, to the proposal, you'll see that there's a big chunk of this that is committed to our strategic plan. As chair and conversation with the ED, I think it's important that we support our ED as we move through expansion and developing a strategic plan to have somebody, a third party available to help guide the process. I think that there's going to be a lot that has to be done in the next year, and having a third party is going to help, so that's why I brought this forward. Along with the continued coaching that we've been going through, and with our board goals of having a twice-a-year evaluation, I did request from Teamworks that they have somebody other than Christine, who we've been working with, do the observations, so that way we're getting a different outside perspective. So I think that that's important to our growth. So that was another element that we included in here. So open the table up for discussion again.
Having worked with Dr. Queen before in Lakeville, he is very good, very on point. You will enjoy working with him in terms of he will get everyone's feedback and opinion to make sure he is working to the best interest of the sport, the school, and expansion.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Paul Neubauer is going to be the person, I mean, Ray is in charge.
Yeah.
But I think Paul will also be the one doing the observations, so.
He's good to go. He's
He
going to be.
came to our meeting.
Yeah, we've done
February.
that before, yeah.
Just as an observer before you join the team. I think one of the biggest elements of the strategic planning is how involved they are within the community. They do a lot of focus groups with the community alone, the stakeholders, our staff, I think some of our students as well, to develop the strategic plan and moving forward, and I think through expansion that's an important factor.
Yeah, they're thorough. He's very thorough.
Mary?
So I was not a part of the communication or the conversation during the special meeting, however, or during the workshop. However, my question is, and you should know what's coming because.
It is budgeted.
What?
It is budgeted.
No, you're close, you're close. And look at this dollar amount, and I know we're over the threshold, so my question is did we get other bids for it?
I do not believe this is something that we need to bid out. I will check with the attorney, but most of this continuing contract work, we do not need to bid out.
Even though our contract with them had come to an end. That's what I just want to make sure.
This is a continuing contract.
This is a new contract for continued services, correct?
For continuing services.
So I can check. I don't think that this is something that we need to bid out. When
I
talk
just
with
want to
Lauren
make sure
before-
that we are.
No, I'll double check and make sure before we fully execute it. But if the board approves it and the attorney says we can't do it, then I will not execute the contract. You know, because I have to sign it and send it back once the board approves.
Can I follow up with a question on there? Do you know any other services that provide this service?
Actually, I do.
You do?
I met two of them at the VOA conference.
Could you forward that information?
I can.
Any further discussion? Yes, so to Mary's point, would we like to amend the agenda, or motion, sorry, to move to passage Teamworks contract pending attorney confirmation?
Do I have to ask for that amendment?
That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
Kari,
Yes. I'm okay with that.
Isaac, are you okay with that?
Mhm.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Is there so for future items, we have our organizational meeting in July, so please review the documents from the special work, or not special work meeting, but the last work session, as they have the tentative dates for the year, as well as the 1 year and 3 year plan. That will probably go in more into the board retreat in August, but have those reviewed as well. I'm missing anything else?
We would find them, just went back to our, main.
In the folder, the board folder, it's out there. So just so you're all aware, I won't be at that meeting. Which means Brian has to start it. We can just leave the voting for the positions and we move from there. Is there a motion to adjourn at 7:08?
Do you
Can I
want to
ask one
mention
quick question?
picnic in August too? Are we gonna do the picnic?
It's been communicated.
Okay.
Yeah, so August 17th, now that we brought it up, we have our 25-year anniversary picnic.
Mary?
The board retreat that you have on here, do we have times for that yet? I'm trying to submission some other things.
No, we don't have times yet. We'll likely, I think in the past, we've done, what, like
10?
10
It was
in the
10
morning?
It was
to
10
like
to 1, but then we realized that we can't get into that building. If we do the same building, can't get into that building until 10 o'clock, so there needs to be a slight delay for
I
setup.
mean, 10:30 to 1:30, but we can work.
We can project it.
And are you gearing to have it at the same building?
We don't have to have
That's-
it there, we haven't determined the location yet, because we don't have the date set, although I think we'll probably have to determine it soon. I don't think we can wait until after the organizational meeting, because then we'll only be 3 weeks out.
Well, what'll have to happen is, I'll have to look at what Christine can do, and then finalize it at the organizational meeting. But we can have the options available,
Okay.
but we can tentatively say the date plus that 10:30 to 1,
Okay.
1:30 probably, time period.
Okay.
That's the best I got for you. Is there a motion to adjourn at 7:09?
I will.
I will second it. All in favor? Aye. Have a good evening.